Okay, good morning, my dear friends. We're going to start with some amazing information. First of all, welcome to the Daniel S. Loeb Torah Center, those who are here and those watching online. I'm sure everyone at this point in the entire world has seen what's been happening in Iran, Persia, and I'm not referring to Great Neck, I'm referring to the original Iran, Persia, that we have been dealing with this unbelievable story. I mean, all I'm going to tell you is it's biblical in nature. And today we're going to discuss a little bit, because it's in Yana de Yoma, so apparent and so clear about what is happening in the world, that we're going to be following this together. But I want to share with you something unbelievable, which anyone who follows the Daf Yomi is aware of. But I want to read a little bit of Gemara for you and read an unbelievable Tosfot as well. The Gemara just started a new Masechta of Avodah Zarah, the laws of idol worship. And the Masechet begins with this extraordinary conversation and prediction between the various nations of the world and the Jewish people that is going to take place right before Mashiach comes. And these nations are going to make up the nations that are going to attack the Jewish people in Israel around Yerushalayim in a war which everyone is familiar with this name already, Gog and Magog. Now, I've been speaking, my dear friends, about this battle of Gog and Magog since my book came out in 2016. And I've been predicting the events that are taking place right now, which the Daf Yomi is talking about right now, about the nations of the world coming together in the form of Gog and Magog. Actually, Gog and Magog, according to one opinion, is one nation. Some say that Gog is the king and Magog is the nation. Some say it's a number of nations. Some say the gematria of Gog and Magog is 70 and represents the 70 core nations of the world that are going to be attacking the Jewish people in the land of Israel right before Mashiach comes. I want to take you, first of all, I'm going to mention this prophecy many times, but you're not going to understand what's happening in the Middle East today without understanding this prophecy. And it's the prophecy of Yechezkel, Ezekiel, chapter 38. And he says that right before Mashiach comes, we're going to see nations arise under this Gog leader. And we know that this Gog is actually made up of a number of nations that are aligned together in their determination to wipe out the Jewish people, especially the Jewish people in the land of Israel, that we will have control of, says the prophet. What's fascinating is that when the prophet Ezekiel lists the nations that make up Gog, we don't know who most of them are. There's a whole bunch of them, but one we do know. And it's the first nation that Ezekiel mentions, and that is the nation of Paras, Persia, modern-day Iran. That's a little background. There's a lot more to say on that. But I want to jump, with your permission, into the Gemara that we just read yesterday. It's unbelievable how it aligns so incredibly. And this is not the first time. You see this. People who do the daf regularly see this a lot. But yesterday I was in a shiur and it blew my mind. So I've got to share it with you. The Gemara talks about how the four exiled nations, the nations that exile the Jewish people, which are in this specific order: Bavel, Paras, Yavan, Romi, or Edom. That is the Babylonians, Abu Nebuchadnezzar. That is the Persians, under, well, eventually Achashverosh, but there was a number of different people who led up to that point. We have Yavan, those are the Greeks that came in, that is during the Second Temple period. And then we have Rom, Edom, under Titus. The Romans destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, and then the Roman Empire fell, and it became the Christian Empire. Those are the four nations. And the Gemara says that right before Mashiach comes, each one of them, or actually once he arrives, but the war is still active, they're going to approach Hashem and say, it's not fair. You never gave us a chance. You never gave us a chance to prove ourselves. And Hashem, God, says the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, says, oh, you want? I'll give you a few mitzvot. I'll give you a few mitzvot to try out. But the famous mitzvah that every yeshiva boy knows of, even my son was aware of this when we discussed it over Shabbat, is the mitzvah of Sukkah. The mitzvah of Sukkah. And says, if you want, I'll give you a mitzvah to see how dedicated you are to doing mitzvot and helping the world and bringing God into the world as well. And the Gemara goes into a fascinating story that could be allegorical, but there's a lot of implications to it. That the nations of the world try the mitzvah, they sit in the sukkah, it becomes extremely hot, they're like, these mitzvot are not for us, they leave the sukkah and they kick it. And they kick the sukkah. And then each nation comes forward and says, everything we did for the Jewish people. You know what? We really had the Jewish people in mind. I know you think we were bad, and we killed millions of them, and we did pogroms, and Holocaust, and exile, but really we wanted the Jewish people. And then the Gemara gives the order that they arrived to make this point. Now this is important. The Gemara is going to make a big deal out of the order with which these nations come forward to plead their case. That really, they love the Jewish people, they didn't want to hurt us, Holocaust, pogroms, that's nothing. Really, everything we did for the Jewish people. All the roads we built, and the bridges, and the technology, all of that was there to bring God into this world. I mean, it's a crazy claim. But look at the order. The first one is Edom, Romi. The Romans come forward and they're like, we were there for you, and we wanted to help the Jewish people when it came to their mission in this world and not to hurt them. We weren't really anti-Semitic. That's nation number one. Nation number two, and this is out of order, by the way, with how they exiled us. Because you remember, it was the Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, and then Romans. And yet we see over here that the order of them coming forward is out of order. Because the first nation is Edom, Romi, and then the second nation is Paras, the Persians, modern-day Iranians. And they come forward like, we built bridges, we brought technology, we really wanted to help the world. That's what our goal was. So the Gemara wonders why, and this is the key point I want you to focus in on. I know it took us a long time to get to this point, but this is the key. The Gemara says, why are these two nations coming forward now, at the end of days? Why are they having this conversation? And why are they first, when actually, historically and chronologically, this is not the way that they arrived? And the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Because these regimes, the Romans and the Persians, Mashkei de Malchusai ad da'at Mashiach, are going to endure until the arrival of Mashiach. The Greeks are going to go. The Babylonians, says the Gemara, this is written 2,000 years ago, are going to go. But Rome, Edom, and Paras, Persia, are going to be there until right before Mashiach comes. Unbelievable. I need to read you the Tosfot, which I just heard about and saw this morning. Listen to this Tosfot. The Tosfot are the additional writings made up of a number of great individuals in France and elsewhere, including the grandchildren of Rashi. And they come forward and they say, wow, you know what, this whole Persian thing, because they're mentioned, right? Says Tosfot, about 1,000 years ago or less, Vahad Amrina Natida. This is being mentioned over here because Atida in the future, Paras, Persia, modern day Iran, Shetipol is going to fall, Biyad Romi, through the hands of Roman Western world. They are going to fall, says Tosfot, Samuch, right before Lebiat HaMashiach, the arrival of Mashiach. That's what Tosfot says. It doesn't mention the Babylonians. It doesn't mention the Midianites. It doesn't mention any of them. It says these two nations are going to be there right until Mashiach comes, and there's going to be a battle between these two nations. The Gemara does not seem to mention, but Tosfot implies the fact that these two last until the end means they are going to be in battle one with the other. And, most fascinatingly, the Persians are going to attack the Edom, the Romans, right? Or the nations that follow in the Roman culture and law and ideas and architecture and everything else are going to defeat them right before Mashiach comes. And when you see Paras, Persia, Iran fall as a nation, as a military entity that is attacking the Jewish people, Mashiach is going to come. But check this out. Here's the punchline, my dear friends. Here's the punchline. Utapashut al kol olam, and this surviving nation that's going to defeat the Persians is going to shetipashut al kol olam tisha chadashim, for 9 months. These 9 months are referenced by the prophet Daniel, who actually was aware of this final battle as well, speaks about it in his prophecy in the Sefer Daniel as well. And over there he mentions this 9-month reality as well. What's interesting is I made the calculation during Shacharit, 9 months from around now actually falls out in Adar, which is following, obviously, and involved in Purim, which falls in Adar as well. So 9 months from now falls around Adar, which of course is Purim, which, if you remember, is all about the downfall of the Persian Empire, which we are going to see again. You know, Daniel saw the Persian exile as a bear, as a dove, as a bear. That is the representation. He saw Bavel, the Babylonians, like a lion, like an Ari. Come back to that a little bit later. Not a coincidence that this present campaign against Paras is called the rising Klavi, lion cub, lion that rises. I'm going to come back to that in a second. There is actually a pasuk from Sefer Bamidbar, from the book of Bamidbar, chapter 23, verse 24. Yankum Klavi, the Jewish people are going to arise like a lion to defeat our enemies. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. But we know that this final battle actually, he says, is a representation, he says, of the bear. Now, what's more dangerous? A lion or a bear? What's more dangerous? Which one would you rather face if you had to face that? Personally, I'd choose neither, right? Because, I like to live, you know what I'm saying? So, what exactly is this whole thing about? So, the Mefarshim say lions are pretty scary, but their power is royal, it's majestic. Even in the world we live in, we call the lion the king of the jungle. However, the dove is also an extremely powerful and dangerous creature. And when Daniel saw the dove, this big, corpulent creature, he saw and he was very afraid. And he said, at the end of days, we're going to see this nation who are going to come like a bear, who want to attack and kill. Now, there's different types of bears. We have brown bears, we have black bears, we have white bears, right? When you see one type of bear, you can run. Another type of bear, you should run faster. You see a white bear, you say Shema and you pray, right? Because there's not too much you can do about it, you know what I'm saying? However, the bear that we're seeing in the form of Paras, Persia today, is a scary one. It is a scary one. And that is why this battle had to include, and is including, the Edom, the other nations of the world, to help us complete this mission. Says the Abarbanel, this final battle of Gog and Magog actually won't even directly include the Jewish people. He says it's actually really going to be a war between Edom and, that's Rome, the Roman Christian world, and the Muslim world, the Arab world. That's going to be the final battle. The Jewish people are going to be involved, but their involvement is almost peripheral. Hard to see that today, because we're seeing attacks against the Jewish people in Eretz Israel. So far, Baruch Hashem, B'li Hara, it's not been too bad. They expect it to be much, much worse. I have a daughter right now in Yerushalayim, and so far Yerushalayim has been spared mostly for political reasons, They don't want to be bombing and hitting their own people of their own religion over there. They'd rather go for, although many non-Jewish people have been killed in these attacks as well. Rahman al-Islam, it's a very, very sad situation, right? But most of the battle is taking place by the Jewish people hiding in, and non-Jewish people hiding in Ari Miklat, little safe rooms and madads, I'm saying? The mamad has become the protective quality. What is the lion? What is the lion connection that's coming together over here? Listen very carefully, this is unbelievable. This pasuk, that was these words of the pasuk that we've been speaking about, that were chosen to represent this battle, Yakum, Kalavi, you should rise like a lion, is a fascinating pasuk. And I spoke about it last week here, and I spoke about the Rashi, who says that this pasuk is really talking about us rising to do mitzvot, specifically Kriyat Shema and other mitzvot, but mitzvot that we do in the morning. We do the mitzvah of tefillin, we do the mitzvah of tzitzit, and we do the mitzvah of saying Kriyat Shema. That is how Rashi understands the words that we get up, Yakum Klavi, right? Like an ari, like a lion. We get up and we rise like a lion to get our mission fulfilled in the morning. It's interesting because we can say that these mitzvot may have the protective quality of keeping away those other nations. And I laid it in on Shema. Shema has a Haganah quality. It has the ability to protect us. Saying Shema, so those people who are not so active in saying Shema, which unfortunately is most Jewish people, do not say Shema, that is such an important mitzvah that Rashi, I believe, is hinting at by telling us that has the power to protect us. And I spoke about this a little bit last week, how we know Shema, and we know mitzvah protects us, and Shabbat protects us, especially against enemies, especially against Gog and Magog. What I did not mention, which I found, was a Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. And he, hundreds of years ago, has a explanation of this pasuk, not realizing that right before Mashiach comes, this will be the final battle between us and Paras. And his definition, understanding of this pasuk in Bamidbar, that's discussing Yakum Gari, we're going to rise up like a Lavi, like a lion. He says, this pasuk, and by the way, the people who chose the name for this battle, there's no way they knew this. This is completely min hashamayim. There's actually no way. They could have looked at the Rashi, right? They could have looked at the Ramban, they could have looked over there, maybe in the Abarbanel. But no way would they find this obscure Ramchal. Ramchal was a great rabbi. There's no way they could have found this. He says, this pasuk is really referring to the final battle of Gog and Magog. Now, how we got to that point is hard to understand. But he mentions, and he says, right at the end of days, there's going to be a battle. And this battle is going to involve the Jewish people. We're going to have sovereignty over the land of Israel. And this final battle is represented in this pasuk. It's mind-blowing. This should be turning your brains to guacamole when you just, and being oozing out of your ears. This is unbelievable. The Ramchal is telling us that this pasuk, that the Israeli army, maybe the Rabbanot, I don't even know, chose to represent this battle of rising like a lion, like the king of the jungle, actually is a reference to Gog and Magog. And we've already said that Gog and Magog is the present battle we're in right now, because Ezekiel the prophet says it's the final battle of good and evil. We know it's the final battle where Paras, Persia, are going to come, and they're going to attack the Jewish people in the land of Israel, specifically around Yerushalayim. This is it, my friends. We are living in biblical times. So what can we do? What is our position over here? How are we going to protect ourselves? Physically, you can go to your, news channels to figure out where you run to, what you should do. But this is not a battle of armies fighting each other. This is very, very important. And this is what I want to emphasize. And I wish every person in the whole world, right? Halavai, just the Jewish people, were aware of what I'm telling you right now. This battle that we're seeing right now, in real time, taking place between Paras, Persia, modern Iran, and Israel, and the Jewish people, hit the land of Israel, is not just some random war of conquering territory or wanting resources, which is what most wars are about. Russia-Ukraine. Russia-Ukraine has historical, it has commercial, it has a lot of implications. I don't care about that. This is not that. This is nowhere near that, my friends. This battle we're seeing right now of Paras, Persia, and the Jewish people and the land of Israel, and the Jewish people throughout the entire world, because we're all affected by this, is a spiritual battle. And it's not me speaking. The leaders of Iran say this very, very clearly. They say that the Jewish people are really what's holding back the arrival of their Mahdi. Their Mahdi is the final incarnation, the version of their Mashiach. Actually, if you see someone with the Hebrew name Mashiach, which there are in the Persian community many such people, they actually have a Persian name and it's Mahdi, right? That's actually how they go. Even the Jewish people are aware of this conjunction of the two. And the present leadership who took over in 1979, this Islamist, political, jihadi, extreme form of Islam, messianic, we just said it to you, they're actually trying to force the final Mahdi to come, which they believe will only come when the final drop of Jewish blood is shed. That's what they believe, and that's what they say publicly. No one talks about this. They just look at this like another war. It's not that at all. It's a Islamist, jihadi, messianic death cult. They don't care if thousands or millions die of their own people. They see them as collateral in order to force this final arrival of the Mahdi. And that's only going to come, they believe, this particular branch of extreme Islam who are running Iran, this beautiful Persian nation, since 1979. They only think that this is going to happen when they defeat the evil in the world made up of Israel, who are backed by the Jewish people and America in the West as well. Nothing else makes sense unless you have that vision. So it's not a physical war alone. It's not even a psychological war. It's a spiritual battle. That is what's taking place right now. Happens to be that our prophets told us this would happen 2,000 years ago, and it would be the final battle with the opportunity and the potential, I got to say it, I have to frame it this way, the opportunity, the potential for Mashiach to come. That is where we are right now. My friends, this is of epic proportions. You're not going to understand the hand of Persia, of these Iranian ayatollahs, of these mullahs, unless you understand what their real motivation is. Their motivation is not land. Their motivation, they don't care about the Palestinians. They are collateral damage. They don't care about the Lebanese. They don't care about the Sudanese Houthis. They don't care. They just use them as proxies. But they are the head of the octopus. I'll say even better. They're the head of the snake. They're Nachash. I'm going to talk more about that in the coming days as we see this battle continue. And B'ezrat Hashem, it will continue in our favor. We'll see the end of this evil, evil regime who's persecuted its own people for nearly 50 years. And B'ezrat Hashem, we'll see B'yat HaMashiach B'karov B'ezrat Hashem. Have a great and successful day. Chazak v'yamat. Chazak v'yamat. Is this recorded? Yeah.